shall we make a start? I mean, quite a few people are here.
Hi everyone.
Hey.
Welcome to mine and Annie's first Instagram Live together. We're going to be talking about privilege today. This Instagram Live is for everyone, although we are aiming this at white people and non-black people of color. And we also just wanted to kind of give a content warning for today, especially if any black people do tune in, for any white nonsense or any white ignorance that comes up in the comments.
Oh, and just as like a little disclaimer, I know we've both mentioned this in our posts, but we're not speaking for black people. We are speaking as a white person and a South Asian person. And this is a space where we're going to let you, like, white voices or non-black people of color, ask questions that they might not ask elsewhere, and that's because we don't want to put extra labor on the black community. So don't expect that kind of labor or like that kind of asking those questions elsewhere.
So yeah, maybe I should introduce myself also. My name is Sabah. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I am a proud trans youth worker, public speaker, and writer, training to be a psychotherapist. In my free time, I just like to dissect gender and identity and talk about power and privilege, and that's kind of the stuff I really like talking about. So this is kind of how this came about.
I am Annie. My pronouns are she, her. I am also a youth worker. I work at the moment with young people that self-harm and that have experienced sexual exploitation. I'm also a curve model, and I suppose you could add in many other different terms, a bit of public speaking, a bit of creating, a bit of fashion stuff here and there. Some might say influencer. I don't identify with that term, but cool. So yes, and I'm very passionate about people and amplifying voices, and I think we both wanted to do something to kind of move the momentum that's been happening. People are waking up. Okay, now what's next?
Yeah, like you are an influencer. Like you have a platform and people listen to you, and in many different areas, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you, and I was so happy that you reached out. So how this kind of came to be was I think it was after the death of George Floyd, and there was a massive wave in Black Lives Matter movements and protests. I don't see enough about dissecting privilege and power and what that looks like, and it just felt like something that's a bit more sustainable than any other actions. Not that I'm saying that any other actions aren't worth it. I think I just want to make sure we're talking to everyone, or everyone's got a chance to jump in on these conversations and feel like it's about them too. Like we all have privilege, and we can choose how we use it and where we put that.
People that have certain types of privilege, we have a responsibility to dismantle and share that privilege, and this is a good starting point for that. It's not an overnight process. So
I want to know if you remember when you first learned about privilege.
You even told me this question before, and to be honest, I don't know an exact point, because I don't think it was like a point where it was like, oh, I just like a little bit of background about me, which I think is probably quite important as well. Like I grew up in a very white middle class village, and I think the word village is important as well, just so you know how like insular that was. In my whole primary school, I think we had like 3 children of color, and that is not black people. That is, just to give you like the demographic. But my mum always brought me up with like, she always tell me about different people, different abilities, different races, and I'm quite lucky that she always like taught me different things, but not necessarily the word privilege. I suppose the word privilege in my childhood, being a young person, meant like it did mean more like opportunities, or like money, or like going on holiday, that kind of thing. So I knew about privilege in that way, but then maybe in terms of like my white privilege, or like my able-bodied privilege, that kind of thing, that was more in my maybe like university years. So I'm 24 now, so like 20s, I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that you probably knew about privilege, but just not like that word. Like, so you had like your like family or people around you, like kind of somehow like informing you that there are like inequalities, or was it like?
Yeah, but it was like very like no shame on my mom, and I know my brother's in there as well. It was very like probably quite cliche, like, you know, some children in the world have no dinner, eat your dinner, that kind of. I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with that kind of life lessons. Maybe not so much like about like privilege in the UK, so more like global privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you?
When I was thinking about this, I also realized that the things that I learned to start with were very cliche and like very stereotypical, very black and white. I think when I first really understood privilege as like a thing that exists in societies, as opposed to like the finish your food. There are people in XYZ country who are starving. Which it just felt really far away, and I think there wasn't anything that really connected with me to it, because I also knew that, oh, my mom and dad just don't want me to waste my food, they just want me to eat my vegetables or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is very important. But it was more like when I was in my 20s, actually, when I learned about, when I realized I was trans. Oh yeah. So what's the background about me? I'm transgender. And I came out as trans when oh God, I don't know. Why did I start a sentence like that? It was in my early 20s. Like I don't know. I just don't keep an eye on dates and stuff. Yeah, I was learning about what like gender is, and what that would mean, like to become like a trans man, because at the time I identified as a trans man. Now I identify more as like gender fluid and non-binary. This kind of concept of like becoming a man was like really, it was really desirable, and I really wanted to understand that, but also like what that would mean, like my place in the world. So I was learning about feminism at the same time I was learning about like gender identities in a way. So I was always really aware of like male privilege being a thing, and I know I still benefit from male passing privilege. But again, it took a few mistakes and tough lessons before I really realized how insidious, deep and ingrained like something like male privilege is. I think before then, when I was younger, I lived in an area and went to schools that really reflected my identity. So actually, it was more that it was really easy to ignore the differences and inequalities then between friends in a friendship group, to do with class or race or faith or anything like that. And maybe I don't think we'd really, I don't know. I just wasn't really taught. Well, and maybe I shied away from looking at myself in such a critical way and position in the world because, well, I guess because it served me actually. Like now I'm thinking about it, why would I think about the inequalities if I'm surrounded by a group of people who look like me, who represent me, who affirm me in so many ways? Why would I then start look at why that might be? And I think actually that is why it is so hard to take that first step when we do talk about privilege or understand what that is. We have no choice but to place ourselves in it. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, on the back of that, like, how did you feel when you first learned about, like, when you first realized that you had white privilege?
I mean, a lot of things, which I'm sure some of the people listening right now are maybe experiencing at the moment. But feeling extremely uncomfortable, like that is, you'll see the word uncomfortable a lot, and that's not going to change. Like it's not comfortable. Inequality is uncomfortable. I think as well, it's just like this realization of all these different things you've experienced in your life. It makes you reflect back on things like, oh yeah, that wasn't okay. Coming out of a bit of a bubble, like you said previously, I was confused as well. But like people, when I say people, I mean white people weren't talking about it, and I was like, why is no one else why is no one shouting about this? Well, no white people. I was like confused, and I wanted to do more and to do better, and that's not changed. I still want to do more and to do better. I don't think it's like you can't do something and then you've finished. It doesn't really work like that. I felt guilt. I mean, I don't want to I know that we've got questions that people have asked, and I don't know whether should we just feed it in where it fits.
Yeah, I think so.
Should we talk about guilt? So yeah, white guilt. We did actually ask a poll on this one.
We asked Are you struggling with white guilt or shame? So we each on each of our profiles, which well, yeah, I did wonder if there was going to be a difference because I imagine well, I know my demographic is mostly people of color, and I just wondered what what kind of white people will follow me. But it's actually quite similar, right? So most people responded yes, 63% on your my profile and 79% on
Yeah.
yours. What do you what I mean? What do you make of that?
Okay, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think maybe I thought it would be even higher, actually, because it's a very like natural, immediate response, I think, and feeling like a lot of that confusion and feeling, oh my goodness, I've been like not noticing this for so long, and that's so bad, and mixed in with, yeah, I suppose that's quite embarrassing or shameful, and then the guilt of either being ignorant or the guilt of things that you might have done or said in the past and not realized that it was a microaggression, or not or being a bystander in a situation where there was either racial injustice or racism, and like of course you're going to feel guilty about that, but it's more about like what you do with that, because guilt is not helpful. Like sitting in like your white guilt and like feeling sorry for yourself is really just not helpful. It's not helpful for like you, it's not helpful for the actual like movement either.
Yeah, no, when it came to that question, if I'm struggling, if yeah, if you're struggling with white guilt, white shame, I mean, I don't actually know what I would have wanted to hear as well, because a part of like for the people who said yes, I'm like, oh, okay, like so there's something happening, like there is a bit of change happening, because I guess what I'm trying to say is like I don't know if it's too bad a thing that isn't there, like to start with, like
Yeah.
even just a small bit, you know what I mean? So I'm even curious as to the people who said no. I'm like, if you're not feeling that, then well, I mean, I know it was a really reductive poll, and I'm like, lots of people let me know that as well. Like, it's really tough and it's really hard to put these massive questions into yes or no.
Yeah, of course.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't like. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I do think it's quite a natural response, but it's like what it's about, maybe like moving that feeling into something else. And someone's just commented, my white guilt helps motivate me to educate people on racism and privilege, which is brilliant. Yeah, so moving that into something that's like useful.
Oh yeah, totally. I remember when I first felt those feelings of, I know it's different. Race and gender are very very different. When I first felt those feelings of shame around either sexism, like I said, I do benefit from our parts of privilege, and those feelings of just I think it is the microaggressions, and when like because it's so easy to miss. It's like how could I miss that? It seems so obvious. It's really easy to just get stuck in there, especially when you don't have somebody else to talk to about it with. Like I remember when I had those moments of unknowingly like taking part in like sexism or microaggressions, I would talk to my like trans men friends who are also trans men, and just was like, what's going on here? Like this happened, and made sure I was able to talk through that guilt. And I think maybe I don't know. I don't know if enough white people are talking to each other about white privilege. Like you said, like why isn't anyone talking about white privilege? Why aren't my white friends talking about white privilege? And I don't know why.
I think you know obviously I don't know what's happened in 2020 on many levels, but something changed, and whether it's people were at home, people were engaging more on social media, that like this has like moved. And I think actually guilt and shame has really come into play of everyone like joining, because like a lot of it is like, well, if you've not posted anything, like people started calling people out, and so I think that has, in a way, like the guilt and shame of not doing something is actually making people join on. I can't remember my point where I was going with this.
Oh, and I wonder if it's also like to do with the fact that, well, maybe it's just much easier to focus on like oppression and the ways in which we're oppressed. So like I know that for a lot of gay men, white gay men, white working class people, and white women, in responses to privilege and stuff, they focus on the other parts of themselves, not the whiteness. And I don't know. I wonder if that's almost like preventing these conversations from happening. Not, I don't know.
So you mean like when people focus on their like the inequality they face personally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people generally, obviously, if there's injustice and they're part of a like a group that face it, obviously you're gonna fight for sort of the equality, and that is, you know, that's fair. You know, everyone wants to feel equal, and if you feel like you're being treated differently, you're gonna be a part of that. And then it's about like, so then that's, I don't know, is there a word for that? Is there a word for just like fighting for your own rights? That maybe that, and then like allyship is the, you know, fighting for other people's rights that maybe it doesn't affect you personally. So
Yeah, it's. I'm just thinking about it now, and it just feels like, you know, take for example for like white gay men, where, you know, there's such a focus on their identity as a gay man as opposed to like their white. Like, do they feel like people of color and black people aren't a part of like gay men community, like that? You know, they don't feel like this is fighting for, um, you know, recognizing your privilege is also going to be a way to fight anti-racism and anti-blackness, and also support the very community you're a part of. There's like
yeah,
some kind of disconnect between who is then a part of this liberation with me. It's a whole journey. But just remember what you said earlier, like there are steps, and like we're gonna have to go back and take the same steps again and retrace and keep going.
yeah. And we're in a time that has never existed before. Like this past couple of months has been like no one's ever experienced this specific time frame as well. So it exists. There's no like step by step, but there's so many resources. We're gonna get to resources, but there are so many resources to guide you in whatever steps suit you. Like you said, some people are good at reading. I'm really bad at reading. I find it so hard. And like, you know, books aren't accessible to everybody. There's podcasts, there's films, there's books, there's just blogs, there's everything. There's something that fits everybody. And yeah, I think when people have set types of privilege, but also being in like experiencing types of inequality as well, it's going to fit you in a different way. And there's different things that you can do that are helpful depending on where you sit, depending on like the job that you have or the people that you communicate with day to day. Because there's even like privilege in terms of, I want to say the word power because it's not the word I want, but like say I'm thinking of like jobs. If, for example, you have a role where you can influence HR or something like that, then you can make changes there. If you have a platform, so you have, you know, everyone has a platform actually. There's just different ways that you can, it's so personal in terms of how you can use your privilege. I remember the point I was going to make a long time ago, and it was that everyone's talking about it at the moment. So that's great, you know. Maybe we would even suggest like white people or non-black people of color, like if you've got a group of friends and you're all like wanting to learn about it and discuss, great, make a little group chat, start talking about it. FaceTime once a week to discuss like stuff you've learned or like things that you're feeling, help each other shake it out and move it. I can't say shake without moving.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that like encouragement to, for white people to just start that conversation with their friends, because yeah, it's something that you're going to be feeling in some way.
Emphasis on not on your black friends unless they've brought it up. Don't try and feed your learning to your black friends all the time because they don't need to learn about it.
Yeah, there was a really good article that I shared with you that about
yes,
why black people are tired of hearing or witnessing white people go through their white guilt or fragility, which is well worth a read. Quite a Jacob's comment when we're talking about realizing privilege, I think. He says, interesting about how we might learn about privilege through one lens where we are marginalized and we feel we don't understand it. But then it's a whole process of learning again in areas where you are privileged. It is, isn't it? You have to really shift. Well, everything shifts, but it's it's not. It's just shifting more aligned to like the way that you kind of are perceived in the world and the way you move through the world.
I was going to suggest we could give an example of a time that we've like either used or like seen that we've had privilege, but we've also had like inequality.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too because I think you mentioned about sharing stuff online and the performativity of it. Of allyship and solidarity. So yeah, I was thinking about how what we've seen. So there's been a few times in the past where a few times that I can remember right now that where there's been some really overt racism in front of me and I've been with white friends and I've been I think the only person of color in that scenario and a white person has said something racist or it starts going down a very like racist road with a sentence or something where I'm just like, I don't need to hear this. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to tell you why this is wrong. And my white friends around me, they've interrupted and I was like, oh, phew. And they said, we don't need to talk about this right now. No, we're not talking about this now. Let's shut this down. Okay. No, we're not talking. I'm walking away. And in that moment, I was just like, oh, phew, like they said something, they interrupted it and they said, let's not have this conversation. But then I realized, like in one particular instance, they literally just turned around and walked away from the racist. And I was like, okay, but now you've just left me with a racist. Like, I don't want to be here either. Like, why can't I walk away? And the other incident as well, like, we were sitting on a table and, when they just said, we're not having this conversation now, let's stop. And I was like, cool. And then, but then nothing happened. Like the conversation didn't go anywhere. And I could see that they thought they were doing the right thing by stopping something and silencing a racist and stuff. But actually, I can do that. Like I want to do that. But white people, they need to go a bit further and then do the work. Like the work doesn't stop there just when you hit the X button on a conversation or you turn around or you leave the room. And I was really frustrated. And I can still feel myself angry because I'm the one who's supposed to be allowed to be walking away. This particular instance was also really Islamophobic. I'm Muslim. And I just was like, no. And then we all kind of talked about it afterwards. And I did say this to them. What I'm trying to say is, it can be quite easy to think that you are doing the right thing, but it's just because maybe we don't know what it's really like to be in that situation. I think in many of my circles, like LGBTQ plus activist community circles, we're very familiar with safe spaces and we don't tolerate this and we won't accept any of XYZ, but sometimes that can just leave us not knowing what happens then or like how we do move past racism or something Islamophobic or something anti-black when just saying be quiet is not always enough. And I know it's also dependence on people's own capacities and own experiences. So yeah, I can share a time when one of my white friends did something that I thought was pretty good. We were at some DIY art space in East London, obviously. A real like also like quite a hotbed for cultural appropriation amongst white people and white people. We were in the queue for the bathroom. I saw a white person with dreadlocks, and I was just like, oh no! And I was just my white friend also noticed, and then somebody came out of the. Well, no wait. So the white person was there. Anyway, a black person or a young woman of color came out of the bathroom, and this white person just starts like just throwing affirmations at this person of color, like, oh, I love your hair, oh, like touching her hair and like sorry their hair, and just like really like in this person's face, and you could see like the discomfort. Like this person just went to the bathroom to wash their hands and now somebody's touching them unconsensually. Like I was gonna hit the roof. I was so mad. Even before I had even the chance to think about what I was gonna do, my white friend was just like, no, and just like went over there. The person of color like kind of escaped and left like really confused. And then my white friend was just like, you cannot do that. Like right in their face, and was just like, you cannot do that. And this is why, and they listed all the reasons why really clearly, and it was brilliant. I was just like, oh my god, I didn't even have time to think about what I was going to say. And we didn't talk about it. They took this white person to the side. This white person who is a woman who was talking about them being a woman and like something about the oppression they face and like, which is stuff that I think is quite common, but also even within like trying to explain to this white person that, okay, so you understand, like even, women are often touched unconsensually. So it's consent is this, you understand consent, but you couldn't apply it to the situation of touching another person and the hair and realizing how loaded that is. And then the white person started crying and and then I don't really know what happened after that thing, which is also like quite a common reaction as well. Like the white tears when white people get told that they can't do something. I wondered if there were any situations where you've seen an example of, I mean, I don't like using like good allyship, but like an action that was done with good intentions and had like the right effect.
I can't think of something specifically right this second, so if it comes to me, I'll add it in. But I think I want to just, while we're there, touch on like some of the responses I've seen on social media. And over this past couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of interesting responses from like influencers. I mean, actually, it's not even over this past 2 weeks. I've seen a lot of interesting responses in general in the past. Of people trying to like prove that they're not racist or prove that they're anti-racist. And I don't want to like describe in detail because I don't want to name and shame, because I know that these things have been like removed and stuff. And also I've heard of, this is not someone I follow, like there's some white women shaving their heads for Black Lives Matter and like trying to give away the hair. But guys, people don't want your guilty hair.
Wait, oh my god, I didn't.
Yeah, my friend told me about it and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Or like a lot of like really like artistic responses. And like, just remember guys, this is like, if it's not your story, then it's not your story to be told through artistic means. Like, just share other people's art when it's their story. I think that's really important. It's about amplifying voices. We're not trying to like express our white guilt through like a nice medium. It's not really about that. And also like it takes away, if you've expressed it in like, say like I went now and like wrote a poem, like wrote a spoken word in like of my something that I saw that was racist or something like, and it was all wordy and stuff, it would not communicate what happened and it would be taking away someone else's story. I think that's what's going with this. I think a real example is not like of good has not like come to me right now, but if I can think of it afterwards, I'll put it on my story. I have a lot of good at the
I was just, what did you just say about things not being your story, and like there are ways you can amplify voices instead of using like our own voice to take up space. And I think that is why I like talking about privilege so much, and why I try to, where I can, instead of talking about like the ways in which I'm not racist, or like listing the things that I've done to support my Black friends or disabled folks. Like we can if we must use our voice, then we can, there's still so much we can talk about, like about ourselves and what we're doing, and it still is going towards the same cause. I just want to say that. I think one of the questions that came up was about, and does come up, is how to talk about race without stepping over and doing those things that we're saying, like be careful of not doing. I mean, do we want to keep talking about those fears and mistakes?
We can touch lightly on that. And I'm looking at the time as well, and I'm like, we only get an hour. Don't worry, we'll cover you. Like, it might not all happen in this hour, but like as well, loads of people message me. There may not be time to like respond to that all in the live, but thank you everyone for messaging in, and we'll find some way to respond to it. Whether it's like in the DMs, or I will take the time. Mistakes, it's important that we just touch on that. You're gonna make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. We were saying, everyone wants to just do the right thing and be right and not upset anybody, but like I've seen a lot of people just saying it's better to do something and get it wrong than to not do anything at all out of fear that you might make a mistake. And I think that's so important.
Oh my God. Totally. Like, I can remember like the times I've made mistakes, you know, messing up. And I mean, I'm not saying that to be like, oh, I hold all this shame and guilt in my body, but it's just that, okay, I remember the things that I did that were wrong or hurt somebody, and I haven't tried not to do it again. So like, I'm glad I've made those mistakes, and I think it's important that we do, because guilt and shame, as heavy and rubbish emotions as they are, they can teach us a lot. Like, yeah. So I guess I'm just thinking about people who are afraid to make mistakes. Like, it's okay, like you're going to, and I think it is important as part of the work that we do.
So what about when someone does make a mistake? What should they do? Because I know quite a lot of questions were about that.
I think it depends on like the context first of all. Oh my God.
I just got really into the live. I'm good.
It's all right. It's okay to make mistakes, Annie. One of the things I would say is, when that mistake happens, when somebody like calls you out or calls you in on something, just like take a minute, take 5, like take 30 if you can. Just really wait before you say something else or write back or something, if you can, just to really make sure you're not reacting from a defensive place or a scared or a wounded place, because that will come across, and that is probably already something known to the other person.
And as well, like, you know, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, you know. So if someone messages and says, look, this is not okay, our immediate response is, oh my gosh, I've upset you and I want to fix that. So I think that's great, that taking a bit of time to just like think about what you're going to say, how you're going to respond. Because I know myself, like, I'm so upset if I upset someone, or if I feel like I've upset someone, you know, that natural response to that is a bit of like defensiveness, like, oh, I really didn't mean it like that, and this and this, and this is the context, and like that. It's like, take that time. What amount of that is that stuff that you rant into them? It's more of like an inner dialogue that you need to have with yourself, and then decide what you're going to say to that person.
Nice. Yeah.
Especially if it's something that is personal to them.
Yeah, it's really important to also make sure it stays like focused on them as well. Like, okay, well, this person told me how I made them feel, and maybe right now it's not about how I feel. Like I said earlier, like, I talk to, when I've done something to hurt someone, I've talked to people who share similar identities as me, and who I trust, to like kind of just check something out, instead of like I've had those feelings where I'm just like, oh my God, this happened, and like, was I wrong? Like, what happened? And then going to like message a friend, but then just realizing, oh wait, no, like, this person probably also experiences this type of racism or oppression. So I'll go to another friend, because that might not be okay. It might be re-traumatizing.
So one of the questions we asked was, is saying white people problematic? As a white person, I'm going to declare that it's not problematic.
Yeah. I find it really interesting when this happened. Okay, so I'll tell you just a short story. I did a TEDx Brixton talk like maybe 5 years ago, and one of the things I talked about was race and intersections of my identity, and I spoke about white people in it. And when I was writing this talk, I remember talking to my mentor on the phone as part of this TEDx journey, and she read it and she was like, so you say white people a lot? And I was like, yes, I'm talking about white people and black people and brown people. And then she was like, do you think I'm white? And I was just like, wait, what? Like, when does this, who was talking about you? Like, also, like, and I said, like, I don't know, but like, I also don't care, like, if you are or not. Like, you know, it's not about you. And like, it just baffled me that that's white people just means something. It's more annoying, and it makes me angry. Like, how come white people get thought of as individuals in these two words, and like, we still have to say, you know, black people and black lives, and everything becomes like, is a plural, you know, because as if to say like no one cares about just one brown person or black person's feeling in this. But when it's about white people, then you know, we can take it serious individually and personally. It is quite upsetting. It's not problematic. It's problematic that people think it's problematic.
Yeah, it's very not all men. You know, you can't be offended by white people. I'm gonna say you can't be offended by it. I say white people. Do I hate myself? No. Do I hate, my family? No. It's just matter of fact. Description.
Description, yeah.
Yeah. The next question was, do you think you should apologize for your white privilege? Which was really kind of in between in terms of responses.
Yeah, it was 50-50 on my Instagram. Yeah, I think, well, actually, and a few people who replied after that comment were kind of like clarifying. What was it? I think you got the similar comments around what people thought they should be apologizing for. Or...
I think the general consensus when it was like extra, because some people click things accidentally too, was some people just thought you should just apologize for it, but then other people added things like no, but I should maybe apologize for things that I've done in the past that were racist and I didn't realize, or like more like that kind of thing. Maybe I should apologize on different levels, but not like apologize for just having it in the first place.
Yeah. Someone, a few people said like by not apologizing for their white privilege, it doesn't mean that they're like proud of it or happy by it. That question, we're not expecting white people to just open the door and be like, I'm sorry for my white privilege. Although one time I did see on like someone's profile like many years ago, someone had like written like white, comma, not proud, and I was like, okay, that's really interesting. I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, white pride, I'm never going to that protest.
Yeah, no.
Let's not bring that up.
No. I think it was something that you said about, it's not about just having white privilege, but more like what happens, or what has happened or been done with it, that maybe needs to be the apology. I just speak about it, which is an action is more than an apology. Yeah.
I once, like when I was feeling quite young, I went to like watch my brother's GCSE drama performance or something, and something that really stuck with me was like a thing about like the lottery and like being born into a lottery, and like that's the same with privilege. We're just born, and then it's like we're not in control of certain types of privilege that we have, but we can use so like saying sorry is like, for what? Like I didn't choose to be white, but I am white. And so like, what can I now do with that? Whereas like, is saying sorry, like, who's that for? Is the apology for like my own benefit, or is it for somebody else's benefit?
Yeah, definitely. And someone's comment as well, just wanted to add, apologies don't change anything other than absolve people of their own white guilt. We need to take action rather than just apologize. And that's totally saying as well, Annie. Like it's just a very small part of it all, isn't it?
We're almost out of time, so we're gonna is white privilege a myth? I mean, I think we've covered that.
Yeah.
And actually most people said no, so that's I think those were accidental.
Yeah.
We've talked about white guilt and shame. Is having privilege a bad thing? Again, very tight. That was quite a tight, interestingly.
Yeah. It's more like what you just said, privilege isn't a bad thing. It doesn't have to be something harmful and toxic and oppressive. We can change it, but the fact that the inequality is there, and like white privilege exists because of white supremacy and other things, and like that is harmful, that is bad.
Exactly that, and that's the same responses I got. Like like a system where privilege exists is bad, but like having it doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah, totally. I'm like aware of like the time, and also like the really cool questions we got as well.
I think that's all the poll questions, maybe the first one. Have you been shocked by what you've heard or seen on social media recently? And I got 68% yes, 32% no.
Yeah, mine were also quite similar. Again, it's like, unfortunately, it's not shocking because these are things that have been happening for years. And you know, our country is built on these things happening for decades and centuries. I think it's just, for me, my personally, it's just more shocking that it's happening. I don't know. I don't know what I'd want to hear from people either. We had some really good questions, like about balancing mental health and people are doing a good enough job, dealing with family, and like the comments, the questions from the comments, like I saw one about youth workers and another about shame and the heaviness of that. And I don't know, I haven't asked you, Annie, but like, what if we did another one and we cover these questions? Or we could like write something together and post it or do another video or something. Because
yeah, we'll have to do some. Don't worry, guys, we won't leave your questions unanswered, because I know that part of the point was about that. But I would have also been surprised if we could fit. We're not going to fit the whole of like privilege and everything into a live and a few segments. Like, this is just like a taster. But yeah, we will do something with it.
yeah.
But I think maybe really quickly we can just touch on the sort of mental health thing, because I know, so sort of like that white guilt and shame, or just general guilt and shame, also comes into like anxiety. And I think guilt and shame are very similar feeling in your body, in terms of like feeling anxious. Oh, what if I make a mistake? You know, it's like popping your bubble is going to open up a can of worms. And yes, if you suffer with anxiety or social anxiety, that's gonna, oh, we got our timer on. I'll talk more about this, I think, in general, because it's, if you struggle with anxiety, it is gonna be hard, because you already feel anxious. Like guilt and shame is anxiety, and then if you have anxiety, it's gonna go on top. But I don't want that to stop people. I think it's about how you deal with that and move it, rather than disengaging completely.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
Because yeah, like if you suffered with anxiety but the injustice was affecting you personally, would anxiety stop you? Now, you'll know that I'm a super mental healthy person and I work in mental health, so I'm not being like, it's not real, not being like that. I'm just being like, yeah, it exists and it's hard, but it can't stop us completely. Yeah, we've got 40 seconds, just, say goodbye. Oh my gosh.
Any last words from you, Annie?
Just thank you so much, everyone that's joined, and engaged, and in the polls as well. And like, this isn't the end. Yeah, and thank you, Sabah, as well, for putting this thing out and letting me take part.
Thank you so much, Annie. Yeah, thank you. And also just like thanks to everyone who's commented and written questions in. Like, it's amazing that you all have trusted us with these questions. Just shows that we need more spaces to have these conversations. So yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you, Annie, and Jacob and Lilith, for